Hello students, let us talk today about agroforestry. Introduction. As the world population increases, the need for more productive and sustainable use of land becomes more urgent. According to the United Nations, more than 7 billion people populated the earth in 2011 and this number is expected to go up to 9.3 billion by the mid-century. To meet the demand for food by 2050, production will have to increase by 60%. These figures, coupled with current problems born out of past and existing non-sustainable land use practices, provide the case for changing the way we manage lands and our production of agriculture and tree goods. Agroforestry has significant potential to provide employment to rural and urban population through production, industrial application and value addition ventures. Current estimates show that about 65% of India's timber requirement is met from the trees grown on farms. Agroforestry also generates significant employment opportunities. It is also recognized that agroforestry is perhaps the only alternative to meeting the target of increasing India's forest or tree cover to 33% from the present level of less than 25% as envisaged in the National Forest Policy of 1988. Definition of agroforestry. Agroforestry is a collective name for land use systems and technologies where woody perennials like trees, shrubs, palms are deliberately used on the same land management units as agriculture crops and or animals in some form of spatial arrangement or temporal sequence. In agroforestry systems, there are both ecological and economical interactions between the different components. Agroforestry can also be defined as a dynamic, ecologically based, natural resource management system that through the integration of trees on farms and in the agriculture landscape diversifies and sustains production for increased social, economic and environmental benefits for land users at all levels. In particular, agroforestry is crucial to smallholder farmers and other rural people because it can enhance their food supply, income and health. Agroforestry systems are multifunctional systems that can provide a wide range of economic, socio-cultural and environmental benefits. There are three main types of agroforestry systems. First one, agri-silviculture systems are a combination of crops and trees such as alley cropping or home gardens. Silvipastoral systems combines forestry and grazing of domesticated animals on pastures, rangelands or on farm. The three elements, namely trees, animals and crops, can be integrated in what are called agro-silvopastoral systems and are illustrated by home gardens involving animals as well as scattered trees on croplands used for grazing after harvest. The three main components of agroforestry, that is animals, crops and trees, can be combined in numerous spatial and temporal arrangements for different functions, creating thus many different kinds of systems. The definitions for systems described below are taken from P.K. Ramchandran Nayar's An Introduction to Agroforestry, a reference in the field. The author, co-founder of World Agroforestry Center, which is called ICRAF, is a pioneer in the establishment modern agroforestry. History of agroforestry. Although the story varies greatly from one place to another, the practice of maintaining or integrating trees in the agricultural landscape has existed from ancient times around the world and has constituted the default practice in terms of land use management. It was only during the last century that farming and trees became dissociated as monocropping became more common in an effort to intensify food production. In Europe, the Spanish dehesas, a system in which pasture is covered by scattered oaks, is said to have its origins dating back 4,500 years. In Germany, until the Middle Ages, farmers would start growing crops on small pieces of land they just cleared from trees. They would then have trees grow anew on the land parallel to the crops grown. In the Americas, numerous people during the pre-Columbian period practiced what is termed today as multi-story agriculture, whereby vertical space is maximized as the farmers made an effort to mimic forest ecosystems in order to enjoy their multiple benefits. In Asia, in the Indian peninsula, traditional home gardens have existed for millennia, while rulers have formally encouraged certain systems at specific periods. As for Africa, trees covered ground crops while roots were growing underground. Swidden cultivation, also known as shifting cultivation, is still used and is one of the first agricultural techniques ever developed. There are plenty of other examples of how people would combine the ecological functions of species of trees and plants in order to provide themselves with various goods and services. This is what has come to be called agroforestry. From centuries old to modern agroforestry, the term agroforestry was coined in the late 1970s, reflecting a significant change in agricultural development. During this period, the rural poor gained more attention from the international development community. Moreover, the environmental and social side effects of the high input agriculture induced by green revolution, which brought tremendous increase in yields of cereal crops, were starting to be felt. In this context, many stakeholders started to look at alternatives such as intercropping and integrated farming involving trees and animals. The creation of International Center of Research on Agroforestry (ICRAF) was an indication of the international development community's recognition of agroforestry as an important land use practice deserving intensified research. Agroforestry is increasingly recognized as a beneficial land use practice and is thus becoming more widespread. The government of the Philippines was among the first to support agroforestry as a viable strategy for rural development. More recently, in 2014, the Government of India adopted a national agroforestry policy. Such institutionalization in developing countries demonstrates their commitment to support wider adoption of agroforestry. Although the creation of modern agroforestry finds its origin in the solutions to development problems, its benefits are also recognized now in developed countries, and government support has grown accordingly. Here are some examples of this. In the United States, after a long period of sporadic interest, notably during the 1930s Dust Bowl, the USDA Interagency Working Group on Agroforestry in 1996 took on the issue of institutionalization. Its work and subsequent follow-up reports led to the adoption of 2011-2016 strategic framework, which seeks to 1. Increase use of agroforestry by landowners and communities, 2. Advance the understanding of and tools for applying agroforestry, and 3. Incorporate agroforestry into all lands approach to conservation and economic development. In 2001 in Europe, tree-based intercropping systems were accepted for access to funding support from the Common Agricultural Policy, in short CAP, of the European Union. In 2004, the European Commission launched Article 44 for support to agroforestry. In the new CAP of 2014, agroforestry is seen as a solution to enhance biodiversity on farms and also as a mean to improve forest areas and rural development. It therefore provides funding for establishment and maintenance of agroforestry practices to this effect. Australia and New Zealand are also recognizing the diverse benefits of agroforestry or farm forestry through their respective programs. Land Care and Sustainable Farming Fund, growing trees on farms is seen as a way to gear agriculture practices towards a more sustainable path, notably with agroforestry projects. Why do we need agroforestry? Agroforestry provides practical solutions to global problems. There are 800 million people still suffering from hunger globally. In addition to the urgency of finding solutions for the hungry living today, the world has to increase food production by an estimated 60% to meet the needs of the 9.3 billion people that are expected to exist by 2050. These figures call for an increase in total output, but also for changes in our food system management. Adopting a long-term vision for tackling food insecurity issues necessarily means adopting more sustainable farming practices. This is where agroforestry comes in. Using the ecological functions of trees, animals and crops has the potential of increasing food production while simultaneously reducing agriculture's footprint on the environment. Perhaps even more important is to make the solutions work for the poor whose lives are the most affected by environmental degradation. From an environmental standpoint, agroforestry helps to reduce agriculture's contribution and vulnerability to climate change, while also improving water quality and availability, among other services. In terms of economic well-being, agroforestry can increase and diversify farmers' incomes and allow them to have access to more nutritious food. As to social benefits, agroforestry can empower women, validate indigenous knowledge, and improve rural livelihoods. Because agroforestry integrates multiple natural components and is at the crossroads of tradition and modernity, it necessarily brings together people from diverse fields of knowledge like agronomists, animal care specialists, landscape planners, foresters, economists, soil analysts, and many more. Thanks to its multifunctional properties, agroforestry is part of solution to the addressing these issues, whether they be environmental or economic or social. Agroforestry systems include both traditional and modern land use systems where trees are managed together with crops, animal and production systems in agriculture settings. They are dynamic, ecologically based, natural resource management systems that diversify and sustain production in order to increase social, economic and environmental benefits for land users at all scales. The environmental, economic and social benefits of agroforestry. Environmental concerns and agroforestry solutions. Intensive and sustainable agriculture practices tends to put a strain on the land it uses. Moreover, in systems such as monocropping, animals, crops and trees are perceived as competing rather than complementing each other, often leading to the large-scale felling of trees. Despite recent overall progress in reducing deforestation, the tropics and the subtropics are still witnessing the highest net losses in forest area. Conversion to agriculture is a leading cause of deforestation. As to the health of soils, the global assessment of human-induced soil degradation found that 15% of the world's lands have degraded due to human activity. Agriculture and deforestation are two of the main causes of this degradation. Climate change is another highly significant environmental consequence from unviable agricultural practices such as deforestation, tillage or intensive use of fertilizers. It is estimated that agriculture and deforestation contribute to a third of greenhouse gas emissions. Agroforestry also contributes to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Integrating trees in agriculture systems can help to reduce impact of climate change on agriculture and inversely decrease agriculture's contribution to the phenomenon. Sourcing wood products from on-farm production decreases the need to cut forest trees, thus reducing the rate of deforestation, which is one of the factors contributing to climate change. Better management of soil nutrients also reduces the need to resort to fertilizers, another significant source of greenhouse gas emissions. Trees planted in agroforestry systems contribute to climate change mitigation through carbon sequestration. By using wood fuel from agroforestry systems, people can meet their energy needs in a carbon neutral way. By providing shade and a cooler environment to sensitive crops or animals, agroforestry can also maintain or help increase yields in face of climate change, strengthening agriculture's resilience. Economic stress and agroforestry solutions. Despite the progress observed in alleviating or reducing hunger in many countries, there remains approximately 800 million people who are still chronically undernourished. However, just looking at these figures would be overlooking another highly important component of food security, which is the quality of the diet. Micronutrient deficiencies affect roughly 2 billion people worldwide, most of them being children or women. Most of the world poor lives in rural areas. Moreover, in 2010, 35% of the people in rural areas lived in extreme poverty, mostly in Africa and in South Asia. An important share of them are subsistence farmers, pastoralists, landless agriculture workers. When they are involved in commercial activities, farmers often rely on the production of a single commodity, which makes them vulnerable to price fluctuations. Productivity of the land and of labor is also frequently low, which is an impediment to exiting poverty. Economic and livelihoods benefits of agroforestry. Agroforestry improves food and nutrition security, particularly in developing countries. Planting trees together with crops or on pasture land can help fight hunger and malnutrition, as trees are a source of food, fuel, and non-wood products that can either directly consumed or used or sold. Growing trees which produce food like fruits, nuts, leaves, etc., provide an easy, accessible, nutritious food for households. The trees felled or their residues can be used as wood energy for cooking and for heating. Leaves and other parts of trees can serve as forage for livestock. By capturing, filtering, and storing water, agroforestry systems may play an important role in regulating water supply. Trees and plants grown on farms are important source of medicines, natural remedies which help improve people's health. Agroforestry helps reduce poverty. The economic value of tree products has great potential to support agroforesters working their way out of poverty by reducing agriculture inputs and thus production costs, or by increasing productivity. Agroforestry can increase household income. With the production of agricultural and forest goods with higher value, farmers and foresters can receive a better return for their labor. The development of value chains for the newly produced tree products may also create new opportunities for small-scale forest-based enterprises and employment. The recognition through incentives of the environmental services provided by agroforestry can provide a new source of income for the rural or the urban poor. Social issues and agroforestry solutions. People living in rural areas are often the most poor and the most marginalized. Limited and declining possibilities for a decent life in the countryside often leads to migration of men or whole families to the cities. Women often having more limited access to resources than men, they are more vulnerable than men to land degradation and natural disasters. This is especially the case of women-headed households. Women are usually responsible for gathering firewood, a task which may take several hours. Indigenous people are another highly vulnerable sector of society. They make up 5% of the world population but count for 15% of all the poor. How agroforestry can contribute to solving these problems? Agroforestry can improve gender equality. Women make up a significant share and in many cases the majority of both the agricultural and forest or tree labor force. Including trees in agriculture systems can help empower them. For example, when trees are more closely accessible, women who are more responsible for the collecting of fuel wood or fodder save precious time and energy. By selling fruits, fodder or fuel wood coming from the trees on the land, women can increase their access to cash. Because of women frequently have a more difficult access to resources, financial or other, agroforestry is a low input solution to restoring soil fertility and increasing agricultural output. Agroforestry can help local communities and cultures to thrive. Agroforestry systems are frequently part of traditional land management techniques, and as such their maintaining holds cultural and social importance. By working together with indigenous people and local communities, modern agroforestry specialists can help ensure the long-term sustainability of traditional systems while respecting local benefits and culture. Preserving indigenous working techniques and species is a way of protecting humankind's agricultural heritage. The recognition of indigenous agroforestry systems contributes to cultural diversity. By providing decent rural livelihoods, agroforestry can contribute to maintaining thriving rural communities. Using species that have strong spiritual significance for the people can help maintain local spiritual beliefs. Main challenges for agroforestry. Although the advantages of agroforestry are gaining attention internationally and a growing body of scientific literature provides evidence for them, it faces many challenges and obstacles. The challenges are delayed return on investment. Despite the fact that trees become profitable as they produce positive net present values over time, the break-even point for some agroforestry systems may occur only after a number of years. Underdeveloped markets. Markets for tree products are both less efficient and less developed than for crop and livestock commodities, and value chains related to agroforestry systems receive little support. Emphasis on commercial agriculture. Agricultural policies often offer incentives for agriculture that promote certain agriculture models such as monoculture systems, and tax exemptions are usually aimed at industrial agriculture production. Agricultural price supports or favorable credit terms which are granted for certain agricultural activities but hardly ever for trees are also discouraging agroforestry adoption. Limited awareness of the advantages of agroforestry. Over-dependence on the conventional agriculture methods and inadequate knowledge of sustainable approaches restrict the interest of policy makers in agroforestry development. This in turn influences negatively the amount of resources dedicated for research, dissemination, market information, and propagation of quality germplasm, which are all crucial for wide adoption of agroforestry practices. Unclear status of land and tree resources. Unsecured or ambiguous land tenure, common in developing countries like India, results in confusion about land delineation and rights, which may discourage people from introducing or continuing agroforestry practices. In many places, lack of long-term rights to land inhibits long-term investments such as agroforestry. In other cases, forest regulations preclude tree growing on farms by restricting the harvesting, cutting or selling of tree products. Adverse regulations. Frequently, agriculture policies penalize practices needed to implement agroforestry, while supporting a large-scale approach to agricultural, food and fuel products. The tax regime may also be less advantageous for forests compared with agricultural lands. Even when a program or policy aims to promote agroforestry, bureaucratic processes involved may be complicated or not elaborated in a manner specific to agroforestry and its potential users. Lack of coordination between sectors. As an intervention affecting multiple sectors including agriculture, forestry, livestock, rural development, environment, energy, health, water and commerce, agroforestry is often subject to policy conflicts and omissions, creating gaps or adverse incentives that work against its development. Moreover, the various organizational cultures and objectives within the different departments may not allow room for agroforestry. The organized efforts in agroforestry research in India began in 1983 by the Indian Council of Agricultural Research, in short ICAR, with the establishment of All India Coordinated Research Project on Agroforestry, also called AICRP-AF 1983, and later the establishment of National Research Center for Agroforestry, in short NRCF 1988, which has now been upgraded as Central Agroforestry Research Institute, CAFRI, in the year 2014, which is at Jhansi. These efforts resulted in collection and evaluation of germplasm of multipurpose tree species and development of location-specific agroforestry technology for different agroclimatic zones of the country, such as Grevia optiva and Morus alba based system for the Himalayan zone, Poplar based system for the Indo-Gangetic plains, Hardwickia pinnata and Ailanthus excelsa based system for arid and semi-arid zones, Acacia mangum and Melina arborea based system for humid and sub-humid zones, and Tectona grandis based system for tropical zone. Conclusion: in spite of multiple benefits from agroforestry practices, majority of farmers have been hesitant to adopt these systems on large scale, primarily because of certain apprehensions about the tree component, such as long rotation, reduction in gross area, and complicated legal procedures involved in tree farming, trade, and market fluctuations. As a result, tree component on farmlands has often been restricted, which is evident from the global report on assessment of tree cover on agricultural land, which reveals 10% tree cover in just 48% of agricultural land. In recent times, agroforestry has received more attention due to diversified outputs, sustainable agricultural productivity, diverse incomes, moderation in climate aberrations, and technological interventions led by research institutions and private organizations. One of the major concerns in large-scale adoption of agroforestry in spite of huge potential is the lack of a well-defined set of regulations and guidelines related to harvesting, transportation, and marketing of agroforestry produce. Thank you.